The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. It's time for Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Now, let's join your host, three-time National Wrestling Writer and Broadcaster of the Year, Jason Bryant.
Another episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Jason Bryan here with you with head wrestling coach Tony Robie after a very busy summer as the freshmen have now moved into their dorms. Tie walls can now eat freely at the cafeteria. We have so much to talk about. First of all, Coach Robie, how's it been since the last time we chatted just around the time for the World Team Trials?
It's been great. Really have kind of starting to develop some continuity with the rest of the staff, having people here in place, and starting to figure out, what our roles are going to be, and just being around these guys on a daily basis. And not only that, but more than anything, them being around the guys on the team and starting to implement their style, their techniques, and just their influence and effect on our program has been kind of really cool to watch develop from my standpoint, and just see how these guys have fit in well with what we have going on, and have added some pretty new and good stuff to what we've been doing here at Virginia Tech for the last several years. So it was a busy summer. August was was a little bit of a slow time, I guess, in the wrestling world, about as slow as it gets, but we're back at it recruiting. The NCAA rules changed. Now you can go see juniors and make contact with them either at their high school or at their home on September 1st of their junior year. So we're diving into that, and school started, so really busy with training the team and our conditioning and our weight training. But things are really good, and excited about the season.
So now that Freya and Molinaro have had some time to marinate into their positions, what's it been like to have them around? We'll talk about Tyler Graff in a moment, but mainly you get the two Olympians on staff. I mean, that was a big push once you got hired to bring them on board, and how they acclimated in terms of melding with the staff that you have in Blacksburg.
It's been great. I think from a personal standpoint, we all have a lot in common. I'm obviously a little bit older than they are, but they both have. Jared has 2 children. Frank has 3 children. I've got 3 children as well. Mine are a little bit older than theirs, but we're at kind of similar places in our lives in terms of what's going on personally, and we can connect that way. And it's been a really good transition, I think, just in terms of them gelling with the guys on the team and just coming in, and really it was pretty much seamless once they were here full time in terms of implementing what they wanted to bring from a wrestling standpoint, and then also from a relationship standpoint with the individuals on our team and our coaching staff and our support staff. So I to be honest, I really couldn't be happier with the transition and the way things have worked out here in the last several months. And getting Tyler on board has been great as well. He's been here for about 2 weeks now, and is coming in and working with the RTC, and has added a lot to that part of it. But he's also kind of attached himself to a few of our lighter weights, and is already starting to make an impact with them on the wrestling mat and with their training.
What do you see from Frank and Tyler, fresh off of them not making the world team? And we saw the success that Team USA had in Paris, winning the first freestyle world championship since 1995. But what do you see from them in terms of that hunger and desire? Do you believe it's going to really parlay over to coaching and getting the athletes, the Hokies, amped up for this season?
Well, I think watching the World Championships, especially for Frank, was very motivating, I think. And I guess I don't know if encouraging is the right word, but he had beaten the guys that placed, I believe, the top 3 placers at his weight class he beat last year. And Chamizo, who moved up and beat James Green in the gold medal match, he lost. That's the individual that he lost to in the bronze medal match in Rio, and it came down in the closing seconds and really could have went either way. So I think Frank, it was probably tough for him to watch that, but I also think it was very reassuring in terms of where he stands amongst the best wrestlers in the world, and what he can do when he gets that opportunity again. And I think Tyler feels very much the same way. He had a really close match with Gilman at the at the trials, and obviously Gilman had a great run through the World Championships and ended up with a silver medal. So both those guys are world-class wrestlers, and they know that. And I think when you get to that level, you have to have that confidence, and obviously they do. They've had a ton of success at every level along the way. So those guys are both excited to continue to train and compete, and it helps our room a lot to have guys that are in here wrestling live every day and have the kind of intensity and work ethic and toughness that those guys do. It brings a lot, and it just raises the level of your room and the intensity in your room. So it's been really, really positive.
What about we have a disconnect in wrestling. It's the high school fans aren't necessarily college fans, and then the college fans aren't necessarily freestyle fans. Based on what we saw in Paris and what we've seen, the energy from guys like Jordan Burroughs and Kyle Snyder, who really can elevate the sport as a whole, why is it important for not just Hokie wrestling fans, but college wrestling fans in general to get behind the international styles of wrestling, and regardless of where they attended college, support those athletes and support Team USA?
I just think it's, number one, as a wrestling fan, it's the best wrestling that you're going to watch. And the competition is just unbelievable. I mean, when you go I went to the World Championships a couple years ago and we're there on Las Vegas, and just the level of wrestling there compared to the NCAA Championships is, it goes up drastically in terms of the quality that you see there. So it's a great product to watch. And I do think that with the success that a lot of these guys are having while they're in college or immediately after college, that a lot of the wrestling fans do feel a little bit more tied and connected to these athletes, because there's not that period of time where they kind of go away and it takes them 3 or 4 years to make an impact on the world stage. I mean, these guys we're watching in college, and then a lot of times that summer we're watching them compete in the World Championships or the Olympics. And so I think it's a natural thing, a lot like going from college football to pro football. You identify with these guys, and once they get to that level, it's all about Team USA and rooting our guys on. And I think the regional training center impact has obviously been huge for the growth of USA Wrestling and the success of USA Wrestling. And I think a lot of people who are close to it kind of could see this coming for a long time. And if you look at our junior and cadet teams, it's pretty impressive where we stand right now amongst the best countries in the world.
Yeah, and tying that regional training center model into the Southeast Regional Training Center. This is something you guys have pitched. It's called Donor a Day, a new blood drive. And we have to clarify that not necessarily rolling your sleeve up in terms of sticking the needle in your arm to donate blood, but it's like rolling your sleeves up and digging into your pocketbook or your wallet and becoming a donor a day. Talk to us a little bit about what the Donor a Day new blood drive is, and how Hokie Nation and those in the Commonwealth and those from around the country can contribute.
Well, basically what we wanted to do is we wanted to start a campaign to broaden our donor base, and we wanted to tie it in with, obviously we have a lot of new blood within our coaching staff, within our program right now, with Frank and Jared and Ty on board and Tyler Graff on board. So we wanted to kind of spin it off of that, and that's where we got the new blood campaign. But really what we're trying to do is create one donor for every day of the year, and our goal is to have 365 people that are giving to the Southeast Regional Training Center, which to me, seems like a very reasonable goal for us to attain. There's, we've got a lot of people. We had 400 people travel to the NCAA tournament to watch the Hokies this year, and we regularly get 2,500, 3,500 people at our matches. So we're trying to get as many people on board, and it's more or less a call to action to our fans and our fan base, and to people who bleed maroon and orange and are Hokie fans. We want to make them wrestling fans, and we want them to support the Southeast Regional Training Center. I think if you look at the standings at the NCAA tournament every year, the teams that are finishing in that top echelon of teams, Penn State, Ohio State, Oklahoma State, they all have very strong regional training centers or clubs in place, and a lot of postgraduate resident athletes training on their campus in their facility. So there's a direct correlation between the success of the regional training centers, which is really based largely on the financial part of it and being able to attain wrestlers and keep them around and pay them to try to achieve their goals in your community, in your wrestling room, and be a part of your program and the success that college teams are having at the NCAA tournament. So for us, like I said, it's a call to action to get more people to support the Southeast Regional Training Center and Virginia Tech Wrestling, and also for those that are already supporting it to help out and try to get more people on board.
And the dynamics of the regional training center model since your first head coaching job when you helped restart the program at Binghamton, I mean, the landscape totally changing. How does the now having to kind of take over the reins of a program and an RTC, how does that really change how the world of college coaching is done?
You certainly spend a lot less time, at least as the head coach for me, in the wrestling room coaching wrestling, and a lot more time out fundraising, meeting with supporters and boosters, and trying to, always find ways to market your program and your training center and, build it and get more people involved, get more athletes involved. And it's definitely a big part of what we do as a coaching staff, in particular for me. So it's definitely been I wouldn't say an adjustment, but it's just a little bit different twist on the job that you do as an assistant coach compared to the job that you do as a head coach. And it's something that I've welcomed and have had a lot of fun doing, getting to know a lot of great people and people that love Virginia Tech and love Virginia Tech wrestling.
Moving on to actually one development that's come up as far as the Southeast Regional Training Center is there's an under-23 World Championships this year that'll be held in Poland right around Thanksgiving weekend. The World Team Trials have been announced for Rochester, Minnesota, about 90 minutes from where I reside for the World Team Trials. And I understand Ty Wall is going to be making another run for another World Team here.
He absolutely is. Yeah, it's pretty exciting for a guy like Ty to have this opportunity to go compete in a setting from an age group standpoint where it's very conducive to where he is at in his development as a freestyle wrestler. He didn't have a lot of experience wrestling freestyle coming into college. Gained a little bit while he was at Virginia Tech, so to jump into the open scene, he had a fair amount of success. But I think this is a kind of a platform and age group where he can really make his mark and has a very good chance of making the team and getting on the team and wrestling the World Championship. So as as a coach for Ty and as the director of the Southeast Regional Training Center, that's something that's really exciting. We're going to send Coach Freyer out to Minnesota to coach him that weekend, and he's excited about that opportunity. He's been preparing hard for it, and I know he'll be ready to compete.
Now, as we move into the freshmen moving in, this is that time of year where football fever sweeps Blacksburg, and we look at the schedule, and at least this weekend, you don't have to worry about contending with your freshmen in the home game since they play West Virginia up in D.C., but you get a nice little buffer week before hosting Delaware. What's it the chaos like when, all right, we got freshmen in and you got a football weekend? You got a little breather from that this year.
Yeah, it's definitely nice because it's the 3 days that the freshmen move into the dorms. Obviously Blacksburg's not a huge town, so it goes from being a quiet town of about 40,000 residents to you basically double the size of the town with 6,000 or 7,000 students moving into the dorm. So it's a hectic couple days during that move-in period. And just there's a lot more energy on campus. And for us, our message to our guys is we've had great focus this summer with our training and with our lifestyle, and we need to continue to do that. And it probably adds a little bit of a degree of difficulty for the guys that are in the dorms with so much going on on campus, and everybody's really excited to get the school year kicked off. So, it's a big change once the students move in. And then obviously when you throw a football Saturday on top of that, right out of the gates, it just really magnifies it a lot. And as a coach, you talk to your guys a lot about some of the pitfalls that can go on during those weekends because it definitely amps things up in a lot of different ways. But we're excited. I'm a huge football fan, a huge Virginia Tech football fan. I love the new staff. I've got to know Coach Fuente fairly well and have been incredibly impressed with what he's done here at Virginia Tech in a short period of time. So the future of Hokie football is really bright, and that's pretty cool for me. I was here back in 2006, 7, 8 when we were winning ACC titles and playing in BCS bowl games, and it was a pretty cool time and a pretty cool atmosphere. And I think anybody that's been to Lane Stadium during that period of time knows what it's like and understands the energy that it brings to this campus. Also
a busy time for recruiting because the way the early period comes up in November, You talked about earlier on being able to talk to juniors. July 1 for a lot of these other kids is kind of the day where, people show up and you're crossing coaches in the driveway, things like that. But when you look at the value of a football program to a high-level Division I wrestling team and these recruiting trips, I mean, how much is a successful football program a draw for these kids?
Just think it adds to your experience as a college student and as a college athlete. I think if you look at the teams that win national championships in football, their applications for admissions go through the roof the following year. So there's definitely a direct correlation between success on the football field and how it is perceived amongst potential college students and college athletes. And it makes it a lot more fun, and it makes it a lot more part of your experience, and it's just something that you can get behind and get passionate about. And Hokie fans have that for sure, and I think you've been down here for some games and understand that. But when we're rolling in football, it definitely adds a level of excitement to the entire campus and community in this part of the state. There's no question about it, and it adds a lot to the experience for our recruits when they come on official visits and unofficial visits.
Well, we're looking at the roster. A lot of freshmen coming in. Some of them are coming off gray shirt year. Some of them are red shirting. What are you looking forward to from this freshman class and their impact on the program?
Well, I think you're going to see a big impact. I mean, we're going to have a lot of new faces in our lineup this year. We have 4 All-Americans that are not returning. So that's a big void to fill. So, hopefully it's going to be a huge positive impact with some of these guys. Some of them will be coming off red shirt. You could see a couple of true freshmen in the lineup. But I've been impressed with the new group that we've had come in that were here pretty much the whole month of July training, and then have been here the last few weeks of August. And a lot of the stuff that was on, wasn't mandatory, just on their own. We've had great participation. We just have guys that I think understand what it takes to be successful, or at least want to understand what it takes to be successful. They're eager to learn. They're eager to work, and they fit in well with the culture that we already have in place. So the true freshman class that we have coming in this year, really excited about those guys. We've got a guy like Mekhi Lewis, who's a 2-time New Jersey State champion, who has really been impressive with everything that he's done in the wrestling room up to this point. So that's going to be a guy that I think our fans are going to want to remember that name, a guy that they're going to want to keep their eye on, along with John Borst and Hunter Bolin and a lot of other guys in that class that I think can make an impact on our program. I think some will do it earlier in their careers than others. We've got some guys like Stan Smeltzer and Caden Darber and Jeff Allen that have done a really good job and have worked really hard, and I think they're going to have an impact. It may take them a little bit longer for it to show up, but the class that we have right now is really strong, and I think it's a sign that the future is really bright.
Yeah, look at some of those names. A couple of those from my old stomping grounds. New Kent, Williamsburg, Virginia Beach, Pocosin area, and one kid that I was curious if you're going to mention him is I really got a chance to watch him at the Virginia Duels this past year. Was Stan Smeltzer, Smithfield High School, and when I was in high school, Smithfield didn't even have a wrestling program, and now they're putting guys into D1 rooms. As a matter of fact, they've got a guy who was in the NAIA finals who had only started wrestling, in high school. So Smithfield's really putting out good athletes there. But I like his upside because the kid is a tank, and he always seems like he's getting better every single time out there. So let's use him as an example, not as like him specifically, but a kid like this that's coming out into a Division I wrestling room. What is their toughest adjustment going to have to be? Because he wasn't nationally ranked, but he got some pretty good looks from some pretty good D1 programs.
I just think their perseverance is going to get tested. They're going to struggle. It's not high school. They're not the big dog in the room anymore. They're going to have to work real hard. It may take some time for them to have success, not only when they compete, but in the wrestling room. I mean, that's the biggest challenge. And to me, it's always about how these guys come in, whether they're blue chip recruits coming out of high school or whether they're guys that weren't as highly recruited. It's all about how can you adjust to the workload number one, that you're going to have, and adjust to the fact that it's going to get really hard, it's going to get really challenging, and you're not going to have the kind of success that you're used to having. And can you persevere? Can you get through that first 6 months to year to 18 months to get to the other side of that when you've got some younger guys coming in behind you, and now you're on the other end of those butt kickings. So to me, that's the biggest thing is number one, how can you adapt to the workload? Number two, what your perseverance is about, and how much you're willing to commit yourself to what it takes to be successful in the sport of wrestling. I just think if you come in and you have a great attitude and you work incredibly hard every single day, and you keep stacking those days on top of each other, one after another, it may not show up. The success that you're going to have might not show up in a month, 6 months, a year, but if you keep doing that for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you're going to see the fruits of your labor, and the success is going to come. So you have to have faith in the system. You have to have faith and conviction in what you're putting into the sport of wrestling and the work that you're putting in and the lifestyle that you need to commit to be successful in our sport. So, yeah, Stan's a guy that I'm excited about. He's a guy who was maybe a little bit off the radar if you weren't from the state of Virginia, but very good athlete, big, strong guy, incredibly intelligent. He's an aerospace engineering major, so he's a great learner and understands things. But yeah, it's a grind, and as a coach, you never quite know until you live with these guys for a year exactly how they're going to turn out and who they are and how successful they're going to be.
Yeah, and there's also, you're not in the room as far as official practices yet. There's some preseason workouts, things of that nature. But oftentimes we see there's some atrophy, there's some walk-ons that come in and then they're gone. I mean, how hard is it for you as a coach to say, all right, we've invested some time in a kid that may not, you may have said, okay, we're going to get you some money if you progress year 2, year 3. And sometimes kids just don't make it past preseason. I mean, how do you deal with that as a staff?
Well, I just think it's part of it. And my thing is I want to give everybody the opportunity. And our message to these guys is whether you're a full scholarship guy or whether you're a walk-on, your opportunity here is exactly the same. And what you do with it is up to you. We've got a sign in our locker room that says your future depends on a lot of things, but mostly it depends on you. So you've got to make the most of this opportunity. You're at one of the best institutions in the country. It's a great place to go to school. Everybody loves it here. So it's your job to make sure that, when you're clock ends in 4 or 5 years, that you can look back on your career and you can feel good about what you invested into it, both academically and from a wrestling standpoint. And when you walk away from it, you can feel good regardless of whether you won the nationals or you accomplished your goals or not. I mean, it's about the process of putting the work in and really committing yourself to being successful.
We'll talk about the schedule on a later episode as we're hitting the home stretch of this episode. But one thing I did want to mention to Hokie Nation, if it slid under their radar this week, that Stanford was added to the schedule prior to the Southeast Open, which will be again held in Roanoke. Stanford, Coach Jason Borelli, well-coached team, very seasoned. What was it like to have the opportunity to bring them onto the schedule this year?
I was excited about it. We had talked prior to the first, when we released the schedule the first time, and had talked about them coming in and us wrestling them, and then them wrestling in the Hokie Open the following day. And at that particular time, he wasn't ready to commit to that, and we kind of moved forward and had added another date. I was looking for another date, but ideally we wanted to have a dual meet on that weekend at home, and then we wanted to kind of parlay that into that team wrestling in Roanoke at the Hokie Open the next day. So when Jason got back with me and was interested in doing that, it was something that we jumped on. It was a no-brainer, really. Great school. Jason's a heck of a coach, a great individual. So we're excited to have him on the schedule, and it'll be a good test for our guys. I mean, we've got a pretty tough November and December for the Hokies is going to be 2 pretty tough months. So we're excited to kick it off with Stanford and see our guys compete and watch this young team develop as that first semester goes on. Yeah,
you'll actually see the older Borelli, Tom, the head coach at Central Michigan, later in the month. Of course, that one bookending with a very exciting football weekend as you host Pitt at Lane Stadium on that Saturday. But Coach Robie, as we head through football, like I said, football season's here. What are you most excited for as far as the Blacksburg layout? Not necessarily Virginia Tech wrestling, but for your own personal life to kick back here in the in the fall as it's starting to get a little more brisk around certain places?
I like to watch my middle and youngest son are both football players, and so my middle son Luke is playing middle school football. I get to watch him. I probably get to watch more of their football games and watch my older son Nate run cross country than I do once the season starts and my little 2-star wrestling, because those are really kind of tough to make it to a lot of those events just because of my schedule. So I like the fact that I can get out and watch those guys compete and play sports and have fun, and it's something that they're passionate about and they love to do. So, as a wrestling coach, you miss a lot of that stuff. So for me, any opportunity I get to watch my kids participate in sports and have fun and be a part of that is pretty cool for me.
Yeah. Now I do have to wonder one thing when it comes to college football season. How closely do you keep up with Edinburgh's football program as a Division II school?
I actually last year kept up with it a little bit. They had hired a coach that was from Erie, Pennsylvania, was from my hometown, who I had known, and they had like the biggest turnaround in college football. So, but to be honest with you, not a whole heck of a lot. It's once you experience football at this level, and no offense to Edinburgh football, but it's just a lot different, as you know.
Yeah, and in case people are wondering, we will not be doing a show before or after September 23rd. I'm just going to let that one out there, but we will, but we will not be talking about that particular game. So I'll let you connect the dots on who's playing what and where as we wrap up this episode of Inside Virginia Tech Wrestling. Coach Robie, thanks a lot, and we'll see you down the line, man.
Thanks, Jason. Appreciate it.
Why don't you actually, before we go, hit us with that donation link one more time?
They just need to go to the southeastrtc.com, southeastrtc.com, and we're going to get ready to do some advertising on Tech Sidelines with our new donor campaign, and we'll be sending emails out. So, we want everybody to get involved, and again, it's a call to action for all of the Hokie fans out there to get behind wrestling, support our program, and help us get to the next level.
Show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.